Hello Animorphs fans, let's talk about the fourth cycle of the Animorphs books. If you've seen these before, you know what cycle means, but if you haven't seen these before, the cycle is one book per character. So the fourth cycle covers the fourth Jake book, The Warning, through to the fourth Marco book, The Discovery. That includes, in the Time of Dinosaurs, Megamorphs 2. Let's discuss this cycle of books because it is an incredibly important cycle. It's had its ups and downs, it really has, and it's also had its fair share of massive moments for the series. We'll cover the key moments from book to book. So book 16, massive. Massive. One of the most important books we've had in the series so far. And it's called The Warning for a reason. It warns of all the shit that's going to come, not only for these books, but from those books onwards. It really is an integral book. The actual plot points, the plot isn't that integral to the series, but the underlying messages are very important. The Underground, forgettable, fuck off. The Decision, we blew up an entire continent, granted on another planet, but that was quite key. And we've got some good development for Axe as well, where he finally establishes within his own mind that he works for the humans that he knows, that being the Animorphs, and he almost, in a way, pledges his allegiance to the Animorphs rather than just the Andalites. Number 19, don't really need to say, this is an important book. We know book 19. Aftran, the Yeerk, will come back into the series later. I won't give too much away, but she will become important again later on. The Cassie stuff is very important because it shows that she does need to continue fighting. She can't just expect peace to rise up out of the ground. She needs to work for it. And that's what's now keeping her in the Animorphs. Those little moments of peace. So Cassie is now more firmly cemented within the group of the Animorphs. The Discovery, the one we've just covered, obviously this is part one of a trilogy. So this is a bit of a weird one now because this one follows on to 2 books in the next cycle. So it's a bit weird in terms of that. But we're introduced to David and we'll cover more of that later on, I suppose. In the Time of Dinosaurs, again, Megamorphs, it is canon, but it might as well not be. It's not that important. Nothing really happens. Once again, we're blowing up stuff. I mean, there's a lot of explosions in this series. In the Underground, which I really don't want to talk about that much, because it was shit. In the Underground, they decide to use chemical warfare. They poison the Yeerk pool with porridge, basically, oatmeal, which is a type of chemical warfare. In this one, they nuke a continent. In this one, they allow the planet to be hit with a comet. This cycle of books has been by far the most destructive. The weirdest part of it was in book 18, where everybody's just fine with nuking the only continent on the planet Lyra. Especially Cassie, just says nothing about it. It's cushy as far as they're concerned, just nuking a whole bloody continent, and it was a bit jarring, really. As far as characters go, we have seen some major development. I mean, most of the characters, really. Well, I say most, it's half. Jake, in The Warning, incredible character development, which comes through into these other books here. He starts to become more cold. He starts to become more decisive. Because at the start of book 16, he was worried. He didn't want to be. It wasn't so much that he didn't want to be. He didn't want to be seen as indecisive. And through that book, all the plot stuff in the background doesn't become relevant again. But the stuff about him becoming more decisive as a leader and taking those firm actions comes on strong. And that, thankfully, it sticks and it continues through. And Jake really is. He's a powerful character at the moment, and he is one of my favourites. Axe, of course, we've already covered. He learns to become more one with the Animorphs, essentially. He won't, because when he went onto the ship, he just automatically stepped up to the Andalites and said, "Yep, I'm yours now," and almost abandoned the Animorphs. Not really, but sort of. And he changed his mind later on. So, bit of character development for him. Cassie as well, character development. So, yeah, a lot of character development in these books. Rachel, though, not really any character development. Christ, she hasn't had much character development since book 2, let's be honest. Tobias, again, not really much character development, but he's got the benefit here of not having a book in this cycle, so it's a bit more understandable. And Marco, he does sort of have development, but it's very negative. Book 20, very negative character development. The way he just automatically dislikes David, which could be, I mean, I haven't read 21 and 22 yet again in my reread. It could be one of the things that sets David down the wrong path. Maybe, maybe not. But the way he responded to David's arrival in the group was pretty sickening. It really was. And I dislike his character a bit more after that. So all in all, a pretty solid storyline running through this. The only... I mean, that's obviously going to be filler. It's Megamorphs, so don't worry about that. The Underground is filler in pretty much every sense. It just is. The average score for these books, not including In Time of Dinosaurs, is 7.2, which is considerably lower than the previous 3 cycles, which all were around 8. So we've had an almost whole point drop in terms of quality. But that's including this one, which I gave a 3, which really brings the score down. What's it look like without this one? Yeah, so without the Underground dragging it down, it comes to an 8.25, which is level pretty much with the previous 3 cycles before this one. So if it weren't for you, in fact, just leave. Just leave. Bye. We'll put this one in its place. So yeah, if you forget the Underground even exists, this is a pretty much spot on average cycle, considering the previous 3 we've had. Obviously, my favourite book from this cycle is The Departure, and if you haven't already guessed which one my worst is, it's down on the floor right now. As for book covers, my favourite and worst book cover, favourite's got to be The Departure. It's got to be. I mean, it's not here at the moment, but if you watch my Departure video, I've got a thing here. It's a beautiful book cover. It really is quite a work of art, this one. As for least favourite, at least The Underground isn't the worst in terms of artwork. Which one is? I've probably got to go for The Warning, actually. It just doesn't look very good. Yeah, so for the worst cover, I mean, it's not that bad. It's just the worst of the lot, The Warning, because those Midmorphs just look goofy as fuck. So that's the worst cover. Best moment and worst moment. Right. Let's get the worst moment out of the way. It's one of 2 bits. And if I'm feeling serious, the worst bit is where Marco is telling David about what's happening to his parents, because that is just... I just want to forget that bit. If I'm feeling a bit sillier, it's the entire Yerkpool scene in the Underground, which was just fucking bullshit. If you want to know why, just go watch my review of that book. It was fucking awful. What is the best moment? That's a bit trickier. Normally, I'd find the best moment from my favourite of the books, but the thing about The Departure is there was no real standout moment. It was just a very consistent book. I think maybe it's because it's one of the more pivotal moments, but from The Warning, one of the very last scenes where Marco has just talked to the person who's known as Gump online, and she's very teary-eyed, and she's telling Jake about how she had to tell this kid not to trust her father. I think that, right to the end of book 16, what was the last line again? The 6 of us shoveled dirty hay, etc., etc., and we were us again, for now. Yeah, I think those last... It is the last chapter. The last chapter of book 16 is my favourite part of this cycle. So that's this cycle. The tension is ramping up. You can tell. Not only is the tension ramping up, but the consequences of what's going on as well. I mean, just consider the amount of massive explosions that have gone in this one. Granted, it feels a bit Hollywood at times, but it's no longer just restricted to their little town, spying on Chapman's house, or spying on logging companies, or rescuing birds from dirty Dan's? Dealing Dan's? What's Dirty Dan again? It's no longer that crap. We're moving on to bigger things now, and this cycle is where it's starting to ramp up. And the next cycle, I think, is going to be quite a big one. So, next book, I will be looking at book 21, The Threat, the start of cycle 5. Oof. Let's hope it's a good one, eh? Thank you very much for watching, and I shall see you next time. Ta-ra.